So we just sing it as a kind of formality, but for Prabhupada he was saying this in deep absorption of Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. It's another song of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And we sing daily so many songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. In our daily life we sing Shri Guru Vashtaka by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Then Nrsimha Stuti, that's from Nrsimha Purana. That was recited daily by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then the other part we sing with that, that's from the Tavakara Kamala Varena Kam, that's from Jayadev's Gita Govinda, which in Tamil Nadu they call Ashtapadi. Ashtapadi, is it? It's among the smarters somehow or other, that's very popular. Then we sing Narottam Das's Sri Guru Charana Padma. And then if we're in the temple room at midday, we'll sing Bhoga Arati. And then for the midday Arati, standard in Gauriya Mata and in many ISKCON centers is Bhakti. Bhoga Arati again, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's. Others have made, Narottam Das has also made Bhoga Arati, but we sing the one given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And then Jashavati Nandan, that's also Bhaktivinoda Thakur's. Then Sri Gaura Arati, Tulsi Arati. So I didn't say that. We don't know exactly who that's by. It just says Dina Krishna Das. Krishna Das, but we don't know which Krishna Das. The Tulsi Arati song we sing. And then, in the evening, Sri Gaura Arati. And in the Gauriya Mats they also sing the Radha Krishna Arati, both by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Jaya Jaya Radha Krishna Jugala Miva Arati Korena Lalita Adisha Kivam. And like that. And then again Jai Radha Madhav before class. So we have contact with our acharyas, how they are seeing Krishna through these songs. And in the Tamil tradition there's the Divya Prabandham. Seeing Krishna through sound. There's Prabhupada singing Jai Radha Madhava. Srimad Bhagavad Gita, yes. Chapter 11, text 37. We don't usually give classes on chapter 11, do we? Is it? Not much. But today I'm giving a class from chapter 11. This is Arjuna speaking to Krishna. Kasmat shatena nameran natha mahatman gariyase brahmanopi adhikatre ananta devesha jagannivasa Tvam aksharam sadasattat parang yat. Arjuna says, speaking to Krishna, O Great One, greater even than Brahma, you are the original creator. Why then should they not offer their respectful obeisances unto you? O limitless one, God of gods, refuge of the universe, you are the invincible source, the cause of all causes, transcendental to this material manifestation. So, Srila Prabhupada's purport. By this offering of obeisances, Arjuna indicates that Krishna is worshipable by everyone. He is all-pervading and he is the soul of every soul. Arjuna is addressing Krishna as Mahatma, which means that he is the most magnanimous and unlimited. Ananta indicates that there is nothing which is not covered by the influence and energy of the Supreme Lord. And Devesha means that he is the controller of all demigods and is above them all. He is the shelter of the whole universe. Arjuna also thought that it was fitting that all the perfect living entities and powerful demigods offer their respectful obeisances unto him, because no one is greater than him. Arjuna especially mentions that Krishna is greater than Brahma, because Brahma is created by him. Brahma is born out of the lotus stem grown from the navel abdomen of Garbhodakshay Vishnu, who is Krishna's plenary expansion. Therefore Brahma and Lord Shiva, who is born of Brahma, and all other demigods must offer their respectful obeisances. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam that the Lord is respected by Lord Shiva and Brahma and similar other demigods. The word Aksharam is very significant because this material creation is subject to destruction, but the Lord is above this material creation. He is the cause of all causes, and being so, He is superior to all the conditioned souls within this material nature, as well as the material cosmic manifestation itself. He is therefore the all-great Supreme. Arjuna is praising Krishna, and he's asking a rhetorical question. Do you know what a rhetorical question is? It means it's a statement in the form of a question. Why should they not respect you? Brahma respects you, Shiva respects you, all the demigods respect you. Why should they not respect you? So he's not really a question that's asking for an answer. He's not expecting Krishna to reply. But it's a statement in the form of a question. It's called a rhetorical question. It means a point is made in the form of a question. Why should they not? It means, by saying that, it means there's no reason why they should not. It means they should. They offer respects to you, and certainly they should. It means, why should they not? It means, if you think about it, is there any reason why Brahma and Shiva should not offer respects to Krishna? So he's making the point that even though Brahma and Shiva are the greatest persons within the universe, but there's absolutely no reason why they should not offer respects to Krishna. And in fact they do offer respect to Krishna. Now there are many people who are much lesser than Brahma and Shiva who don't offer respects to Krishna. Why don't they offer respects to Krishna? Well, let's see what Krishna says about it. He's already said that. And Prabhupada elaborates it on it in the purport. It's a very wonderful purport. It's a very long purport. One of the longest in Bhagavad Gita as it is. One verse that Srila Prabhupada said, this is a very important verse. From chapter 7, text 15. Namang dushkritino mudha prapadyante naradhamaha mayaya pahrita jnana asurang bhavamashritaha. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. From the purport, at this point a question arises. How is it that educated philosophers, scientists, businessmen, administrators, and all the leaders of ordinary men do not surrender to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, the all-powerful personality of Godhead? Mukti, or liberation from the laws of material nature, is sought by the leaders of mankind in different ways and with great plans and perseverance for a great many years and births. But if that liberation is possible, by simply surrendering unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then why don't these intelligent and hard-working leaders adopt this simple method? It's a good question, isn't it? Sometimes people ask us that. Well, if Krishna consciousness is so good, like you say, then why don't more people take to it? If it's really good, then certainly so many intelligent, educated, thoughtful, well-meaning people should take to it. There are planning commissions, there are surveys, research projects, how to improve the condition of mankind. There is the United Nations. There are all kinds of charitable organizations which are thinking of doing good to others. But if the highest good can be had by surrendering to Krishna, then why doesn't everyone take to it? People are following different religious processes, but if you can get the highest religious benefit by surrendering to Krishna, then why don't people do it? And the fact that more people or many people don't do it would seem, people ask that question, well, if it's so good, why don't more people take to it? So by saying that, they imply that it can't really be true. Krishna consciousness cannot really be true, because if it was what you say it is, then certainly more people should have taken to it. So many people follow, then you can fill in the dotted line, your favorite rascal. All these rascals have so many followers. In India there are so many rascals, demons, who are worshipped as God or as great spiritual leaders by similarly foolish rascals. There are so many famous names. The name of Srila Prabhupada is not as famous as that of... There are so many rascals. I don't want to say their names. There's this... well, he's almost dead now. That there was one Baba, something... what's his name? Something, I can't remember exactly. Then there's some Shaviranka in Bangalore, something like that. And some... something like that. I don't want to say exactly. So there are so many of these. Some fisherwoman who loves everyone. They have so many followers. So if Krishna consciousness is actually the path, then why don't more people take to it? Well, Prabhupada goes on. The Gita answers this question very frankly. Those really learned leaders of society like Brahma, Shiva, Kapila, the Kumaras, Manu, Vyas, Devala, Asita, Janaka, Prahlad, Bali, and later on Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, Sri Chaitanya and many others who are faithful philosophers, politicians, educators, scientists, etc., surrender to the lotus feet of the Supreme Person, the all-powerful authority. Those who are not actually philosophers, scientists, educators, administrators, etc., but who pose themselves as such for material gain, do not accept the plan or path of the Supreme Lord. They have no idea of God. They simply manufacture their own worldly plans and consequently complicate the problems of material existence in their vain attempts to solve them. Srila Prabhupada was gifted by Krishna of presenting spiritual truth in very simple English language, but with amazingly profound insights. Do you know what this word profound means? In the youth class yesterday, I asked them, I didn't know what it means. It's a good word in English. I was saying that Indian languages are better, but this is a good word for explaining Krishna consciousness. Profound means very deep, something which is very deep, beyond the... It means practically the opposite of shallow.
Can we say deep-rooted?
No, it's not exactly the same as deep-rooted. It's deep, but it means something, a realization, or which is very, very close to spiritual. It's very, very deep. It's not something very light. It's something that's, we can say a realization that is something profound. So Srila Prabhupada, blessed by Krishna, had so many realizations and insights. And here's one of them. That this is something very interesting here, that we talk about philosophers in the recent ages in India. Dr. Radha Krishnan from Chennai was considered a great philosopher. He's well known as the President of India, but he was appointed the President of India because he was a philosopher, just like now Abdul Kalam, also from Tamil Nadu, from Rameshwaram. He's now well known as an ex-President of India, but actually he was well known as being a scientist. So actually we know Dr. Radha Krishna as the first President of India, I think? He was the first, wasn't it? First President. Yeah. Rajendra Prasad was saying. But he was, actually before that, he was internationally famous as a philosopher. Internationally famous. So, of course, he was a complete Mayavadi. Prabhupada opposed him very strongly. Prabhupada personally knew him, actually. But he opposed him very strongly. He wrote in Bengali some things. He named him personally. And he completely smashed his impersonal writings. In there, he wrote it that it is better to have, he said, I know that he won't be very pleased with this, what I'm writing, Prabhupada wrote, but it is better to have, the saying is, it is better to have a learned enemy than a foolish friend. So, Prabhupada writes here, okay, alright, he's a famous philosopher, right? And there are so many famous philosophers. And scientists. Who's a famous scientist? Well, we just said Abdul Kalam. Very famous. The most famous scientist in the world at the present time is Stephen Hawking. You've all heard his name. I mean, all the young people in India know his name. Before, Prabhupada was talking about businessmen. So, in India, the big businessmen are well known. In the West, they don't care about them. In Japan, also, big businessmen are well known. But in India, the Ambanis, the Tatas, the Birlas, and the Hindujas, they're all well known. So Prabhupada writes that they are not actually philosophers, scientists. So here Prabhupada said Dr. Radha Krishna was not a philosopher. Stephen Hawking is not a scientist. But they pose themselves as such for material gain, but they do not accept the plan or path of the Supreme Lord. They're not really philosophers at all if they don't know Krishna. They're not really scientists at all if they don't know Krishna. They're not really educators at all. This Montessori system of education is very famous, huh? But Prabhupada is saying that they're not really educators. They don't teach about Krishna. They have no idea of God. Now, they simply manufacture their own worldly plans, and here's, I was saying about a profound realization. They consequently complicate the problems of material existence in their vain attempts to solve them. They're trying to solve the problems, but they're actually making it worse in the name of solving it. Just like they solved, you see, we have a problem. What are the problems of material life? Well, we need food, clothing and shelter. These are the basic. Ahara, nidra, bhaya, maitun. These are the 4 basic needs to be fulfilled. Eating, sleeping, mating and defending. So, food is the first. So we can, in Dubai, you can bring food from different countries. And so they've made arrangements. They can grow food in one country and bring it to another. But so it's better. No? It's you see, you can get food from all over the world, but no one ever eats fresh food. Most people in the world nowadays, they don't know what fresh food tastes like because they've never had it in their life. It's all grown with chemicals. See, the vegetable, you have to cut it, cook it immediately, offer to Krishna, and then take it. But nowadays, they cut it the night before. The freshest you can get is not in Dubai, you won't get it that fresh. But they'll cut it in like North Arcot district, and then take it on the train, early morning train, and then they'll sell it in the wholesale market in Chennai, and then they'll take it to the retail market. So the earliest you can get it is 12 hours after it's cut. And usually they buy it and keep it for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, put it in the fridge. They have cold storage, potatoes, carrots. So people don't know what fresh food is. So they solved the problem. They made it better. That you see, now you have the fridge, so you only have to go to the market once a week. But then you have it comes out of the fridge, it's all wilted up. So you may say, well, what's this got to do with Bhagavad Gita and Krishna Katha? Well, Prabhupada is talking. Because Krishna is talking about this. Prabhupada gives a long purport here. That they're complicating the problems of material existence in their vain attempts to solve them. So, I was talking before about Prabhupada seeing Krishna in Vrindavan. But Prabhupada also spoke a lot about the mismanagement of human society and the problems of material existence. Because to qualify to go to Vrindavan, we have to be fully convinced that, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, this material world is no better than a hole into which people pass through. Which nowadays we have flush toilets. But previously, there were holes in the ground, and everyone would come and pass through, and it would smell very bad. I have experienced this, having spent years traveling in the villages in Bangladesh and India. Now there's a move in Bangladesh. Everyone should have their own toilet. They're becoming advanced. Otherwise, people would go in the field. Or there would be one particular hole. So that particular hole where people go to pass through is not very pleasant. Although the flies think it's very pleasant. There are many flies. So the material world is compared to that. We try to decorate it with silk and paint, nail polish, perfume. We try to make neon lights. We try to make it look nice. But actually, this material world is no better than a hole into which people pass through. So that is the reality of material life. And we are here because we don't surrender to Krishna. Why shall we not surrender to Krishna? There's no good reason why we shouldn't surrender to Krishna. If we're actually intelligent, then we surrender to Krishna, because by doing so, we get free from all the miseries of material existence and enter into eternal blissful life. But we don't, because we're so stupid. It doesn't make any sense not to surrender to Krishna. But we don't do so. Because what can we say? It's pig-headed obstinacy. Tremendous foolishness. We can measure certain things. What is the distance between one object and another? We can measure it. Srila Prabhupada told a humorous story in this regard. Gopal Ban story, Bengali story. That the king would keep some joker, because it's always very serious. Serious business, so just for some comic relief he would keep a joker. So his joker was Gopal Ban, the king of Krishnanagar. And one day Gopal Ban walked into the court, and the king he stood in front of the king, and the Maharaj asked, Gopal, what is the difference between you and an ass? So Gopal walked towards the king, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He reached up to the king and said 12 steps. So we can measure distance. Well, actually, if you want to get philosophical, you can't measure distance either, because there's no such thing as a fixed point. Anyway, that's a bit of subtle philosophy. We can measure sound, intensity of sound, and like that sound. Is that silent mode? No, it's not silent mode. Silent means silent. But we may not hear something. To us it may be silent, but someone else may be able to hear it. In the West, where the dog culture is very strong. What was that we saw on the internet just now? The main news items. Dog is rescued from a remote island. That means they must have sent the American Marines in or something and spent a few $1,000s to rescue a stranded dog. So, a dog, in the West they have dog whistles. You blow it, and humans can't hear it, but the dog can hear it because it's very high pitch. So then the dog comes running towards you, and you pat it on the head and it licks you, and you feel happy. So we can measure sound, we can measure distance, we can measure specific density of water, we can measure light. There are so many things we can measure, but we can't measure happiness. You can't measure it in a physical manner. We can say someone's happy, someone's very happy, but there's no happyometer. There's hydrometers, hygrometers, and rulers, but there's no happyometer. So similarly, there's no measure to stupidity. Brings to mind a saying of Einstein that what was that? I can't remember exactly that. There. What was it exactly? He said there are two things which are immeasurable. One is the universe and the other is man's stupidity. And I'm not sure about the first. In other words, maybe we can measure the universe, but we can't measure man's stupidity. Two things that are unlimited. He said one is the universe and the other is man's stupidity. And I'm not sure about the first. Now they're getting you on the landline, huh? So, why should we not surrender to Krishna? It's just due to unlimited stupidity, that's all. What else can be said? So I may say, well, but there are so many highly intelligent people who don't surrender to Krishna. How can you say they're all stupid? Well, they are stupid. Even if they have PhDs, even if they write books, even if they're heads of state, if they don't surrender to Krishna, they're stupid. It's only superficial intelligence. One who doesn't surrender to Krishna is Janiya Shuniya Bisha Kaino. They're just willingly destroying themselves. Even after getting knowledge of Krishna, people think, oh, I don't believe that. I don't have time for that. I have my own God. That's the devil. They'll say like that. We don't believe that. So many times I discussed with people who have no philosophical understanding and no entrance into philosophy. You discuss point by point by point all the philosophical points, why we should accept Krishna. And at the end they say, well, I don't believe it. Then why discuss? They're determined from the beginning. They're only arguing with you to try to convince you, but they won't even listen actually to what you're saying. I guess you could say that about us also, because we know that what they're saying is nonsense, and we're not saying, and they think what we're saying is nonsense, but we're not speaking dogmatically. I mean, if we do examine philosophically, there is nothing in comparison to Krishna consciousness, which is why I'm always asking devotees to read Srila Prabhupada's books, because I find that many of our devotees in ISKCON, they're accepting Krishna consciousness, but not in the way that Srila Prabhupada gave it. What do I mean by that? Because Srila Prabhupada, he was always speaking philosophy. Day and night, literally, Srila Prabhupada was speaking philosophy. During the day he would meet with people and his disciples, and and all kinds of people he would meet with. He would have public programs. They would bring... Srila Prabhupada very much liked that his disciples would bring to him educated people, like professors and leading people of society, intellectuals, and Prabhupada would preach to them. And at night he would go on speaking philosophy by dictating his Bhaktivedanta purports. So when I say that devotees are not accepting Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada gave it to us, it means that they follow 4 regular principles, chant 16 rounds, and they do all the rituals, Mangalarti, all these things. But without reading Prabhupada's books, it's just like a kind of religion, you can say. The different religions, they have their rituals, right? In Islam, they do 5 times namaz and Ramadan fasting, and in Christianity they go to church once a week. So they have their rituals. So if we do the rituals of Krishna consciousness, but we don't try to understand the philosophy as Srila Prabhupada has given it, then we can say we're following a kind of religion. But Srila Prabhupada didn't present Krishna consciousness as a religion, but as it's normally understood, but as a science. That we should scientifically understand, not that because we're Hindus and we're pious, we take it, of course that's good. We find many Hindus, people from Hindu background, are taking to this path that Srila Prabhupada and all the acharyas, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us. So more Hindus are taking to it. That means because of some, we can say because of some natural piety. But we shouldn't take to it as simply another branch of Hinduism. But we should understand this philosophy. Srila Prabhupada, we'll find in the Science of Self-Realization, when one journalist asked Prabhupada about this religion, Prabhupada said it is not a religion, it is a scientific, cultural and philosophical presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. He didn't want to use that word religion, because religion is defined in the dictionary as a kind of faith. Now definitely faith is required, that Krishna speaks in Bhagavad Gita of faith. Faith is the basis. Shradhana Purusha Dharmas Yasya Parantapa Aprapya Mang Nivartante Mrityu Sangsara. One who does not have faith, one who does not maintain faith in this, he falls away. He goes back to samsara, to death and repeated birth. So faith is required, but this term faith, this has been analyzed by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Chaitanya Shikamrita. Very important book. Monumentally important book. That there are 2 kinds of faith, Lokiki Shraddha and Shastriya Shraddha. Lokiki Shraddha means a general kind of faith. Without going very deeply, one has a general kind of faith. And Shastriya faith means that we've studied Shastra, we've heard the philosophy described, we apply our intelligence to try to understand this. In this way our faith is fixed. Otherwise, the Lokiki Shraddha, that will tend to be mixed with Lokik. You have this word in Tamil? Lokik? It means worldly. It literally means of this world. And there's another term, alokik, means not of this world. So if our faith in Krishna is lokik, you see, just like you're born in a Hindu family and you worship many gods, mostly, isn't it, in Hindu families? So you have a general idea that Krishna is good, different gods are good, religion is good. But at school also we learn so many things, and from the TV we learn so many things. So we have a kind of mixed up general idea of the world. And then we take to Krishna consciousness and we learn that Krishna is supreme. We take to that. But we may have we may take along with us many of the ideas that we've imbibed since childhood. Just like all over the world, I think more outside of India than within India, there's very high regard for Mother Teresa. People think she's a great saint. And in India also you'll see many times pictures of Mother Teresa. But from the Shastriya point of view, she's not a great saint. She was actually, I gave a long lecture on this. Do we have that here? About Mother Teresa, that CD? You probably don't have it here. I was discussing some of the points. I don't want to get into it in great detail now, but actually she was a meat eater. And she was living in Calcutta all her life. So she had ample opportunity to learn about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. She had no interest. And she was if anyone was chanting Hare Krishna, she would want to convert them into a meat-eating, beef-eating, non-chanter of Hare Krishna. So we can't call her very saintly. She was concerned with the body. And she believed in Jesus somewhat, although later it came out that actually she had lots of doubts in Jesus that came out after her death. So, but there's a general idea that she's very saintly and compassionate. But if we read what Prabhupada says, that concern with the body, he is like this compassion, it's like being compassionate for saving the shirt of the drowning man. If we're concerned with the body, then it's just like the shirt is the covering of the body, so the body is the covering of the soul. So real compassion means, like Srila Prabhupada, to go all over the world and tell people that you're all rascals because you're not surrendering to Krishna. And Prabhupada used these words regularly. So that's real compassion. Prabhupada was challenged in Haridwar when he was there in 1977, speaking very strongly. And someone asked, well, why aren't you compassionate? And Prabhupada said, your idea of compassion is like blowing on a boil. Who's had a boil? Anyone had a boil? Mostly everyone gets at some point in time. So if you get a boil, it's very painful, isn't it? If someone comes and blows on it, that won't help much, will it? You might, again, there's no painometer. But if there's a painometer, that might reduce it by 1% for the short time that you're blowing. So Prabhupada said, your compassion is like blowing on a boil. Real compassion is to take a knife and cut it. Has anyone had the boil cut without anesthetic? I have. I had an abscess, which is worse than a boil. I had it cut without anesthetic. Or I had another one in England, one I had in India with no anesthetic at all. Extremely painful. And in England they put some dry ice, which was not effective, only slightly effective. So very painful. Cutting the boil is extremely painful, but ultimately it gives relief. So Srila Prabhupada gave this example, that real compassion is to cut the boil, bring out all the pus. So, I'm just giving this as one example, that we may have many ideas which we've absorbed throughout the course of previous lives and in this life. And unless we hear and understand this philosophy from Srila Prabhupada's books and devotees who are speaking according to Prabhupada's books, then we'll maintain that. We'll think, yes, Krishna is very nice, Krishna is very sweet, Krishna is very beautiful. We like to hear about Krishna in Vrindavan. We like to hear stories about Krishna. But at the same time, we have many misconceptions which actually tie us to this material world, because we're still in the bodily concept of life. And we're thinking that worldly service is very good. Although we're not against hospitals and all these kind of things, but we should know that they have no value for the soul. That's why Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that the neophyte devotee ringing the bell in the temple during arati is thousands of times more valuable, both materially and spiritually, not even spiritually, but even materially, than the altruists opening thousands of hospitals. So any neophyte devotee who goes in the temple and rings the bell, ding, 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 is far better than Mother Teresa. Now, we can only understand that if we regularly hear and imbibe this philosophy which Prabhupada was imparting. But we have to be ready to accept that also, because if we say these things, most people won't be ready to accept it. Unless we say it again and again and again, even our own devotees won't accept it. In fact, some of our so-called devotees who definitely cannot be reading Prabhupada's books, that's why I gave this lecture in Secunderabad, which lasted almost 2 hours, about is Mother Teresa a saint? Because someone had asked me, someone in America, that she was told by someone that she should learn compassion by reading about the life of Mother Teresa, and she asked me about that by email. Well, should I do that? Now, even if you think that Mother Teresa is compassionate, which I don't think is very compassionate, eating animals, what's that compassion? But we don't have enough examples among our Vaishnava acharyas. You can't learn from our Vaishnava acharyas. So, what Krishna conscious means is it's a revolutionary way of thinking, and we may not be ready to accept it, and we might not want to accept it, or we might be embarrassed to say these things because people will think, "What's wrong with you? You don't regard Mother Teresa." I don't have any particular thing against Mother Teresa. I happen to think of this example. I mean, it could be, let's say that fisherwoman from Kerala who embraces everyone. She's so much love. It's not love. It's rascaldom. Because actual love means to instruct people about Krishna. To say that you love someone without instructing them to surrender to Krishna is just entangling them in this material world. It's violence towards them. They may feel, very nice, Amma embrace me. But she's not your Amma. What's she doing embracing so many men? It's completely bogus. In the name of being religious, she's diverting people from the actual path, which is Krishna consciousness, surrender to Krishna. So she's another rascal. They're all rascals. See? But if you say this, people will become upset. So they think, yeah, they're all very nice, they're all very good. Not according to Bhagavad Gita. They're not good. So we're not going to understand this unless we hear Bhagavad Gita as it is, regularly. And all that we have to read Prabhupada's books to understand all these points. This is one that there are so many points to be understood. It's not a light subject to understand. Srimad Bhagavatam, Vedyam Vasavamatra Vastu. This is the real subject of the Vedas. So it's not just, it's not like a Tom and Jerry cartoon or something. You can't learn about Krishna from TV Mahabharata. Vedyam Vasavatra Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayan Mulanam. It is all auspicious and it uproots the threefold miseries. Vedyam Vasavatra Vastu, Srila Prabhupada says, it is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. So, to understand, to accept this, we're not going to, well, first of all, to accept it, we have to know what's in Prabhupada's books. And not put our own spin on it. You know this term, to put our own spin? It means to put our own interpretation on it. Just like, well, just to give one local example, there's one book I saw published locally, in this area, of Bhagavatam shlokas for learning. But I saw that many of the shlokas that Prabhupada spoke regularly are not in there. 5th canto of Bhagavatam, can give this. And I can only presume they're not in there because someone thought that they don't like these verses very much, because they're not the kind of verses that people like to hear very often, because it smashes completely illusion, which is why they're in Srimad Bhagavatam. People don't like to hear this. Okay, I'll just read a few verses that Srila Prabhupada often quoted. Rishabha uvacha nayang deho deha bhajang nriloke kashtan kaman arhate virdubhujam ye tapo divyam putraka yena sattvam. You know this verse, that's good. Shudhyad yasvad brahma sokyam tvanantam. Oh, there's a printing mistake there. Oh, I'll just make a note. Send that to the editors. Yeah. Oh, yeah, get that. Now my diary is there? Yes. Open it on today. Okay, I'll get back to that later. Whenever I have time. Sometime I'll have time. Okay, translation. Lord Rishabdev told his sons, "My dear boys, of all the living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded this human form should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available even for dogs and hogs that eat stool." See, people don't like to hear this, right? But we should hear it. We need to hear it. One should engage in penance and austerity. People don't like to hear that either. To attain the divine position of devotional service. We like to hear that just by chanting Hare Krishna, you can attain all perfection, which is true. But here also in Bhagavatam says that some penance and austerity is needed. You just can't chant Hare Krishna and be a sense enjoyer. It doesn't work. You don't get the result. By such activity, one's heart is purified, and when one attains this position, he attains eternal blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever. Okay, the first two lines of the next verse were quoted often by Srila Prabhupada. And the other two lines also, but especially the first two lines. Mahat sevang dwaram ahur vimuktis tamo dwaram yoshitang sangi sangam. Which one can attain the path of liberation from material bondage only by rendering service to highly advanced spiritual personalities. Then the second line, Tamodwaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam. For those who are not interested in such activities, who associate with people fond of women and sex, the path to hell is wide open. Then, text 4, this is another one quoted very often by Srila Prabhupada. Nunang pramatah kurute vikarma yad indriya pritiya aprinoti nasadhu manye yata atmano yam asan api kleshada asadehaha. When a person considers sense gratification the aim of life, he certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of sinful activity. He does not know that due to his past misdeeds, he has already received a body which, although temporary, is the cause of his misery. Actually, the living entity should not have taken on a material body, but he has been awarded the material body for sense gratification. Therefore, I think it not befitting an intelligent man to involve himself again in the activities of sense gratification by which he perpetually gets material bodies one after another. Follow that? It needs a bit of explaining. If you just hear it, it's a bit difficult to catch. Text 5. Parabhavastavad abodha jato yavanna jignyasata atmatattvam. As long as one does not inquire about the spiritual values of life, one is defeated and subject to miseries arising from ignorance. Then text 8, another one. This is chapter 5 of Canto 5 of Bhagavatam. This is a verse often quoted by Srila Prabhupada, but somehow or other not very often quoted nowadays in ISKCON. Why is that? We should quote what Prabhupada quoted, isn't it? Pungsastriya mituni bhavametam tayor mito hridaya granthim ahuhu ato griha kshetra sutapta vitaya janasya mohoyam ahammameti. The attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and the female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. Don't think this applies only to non-devotees. That's them. I'm okay. I'm a Krishna conscious grihastha, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Well, just because you're Krishna conscious and a grihastha doesn't mean we're on the level of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, to instruct us, sung so many songs like Amar Jiban Shada Pape Rata Nahika Punnera Lesh. My life is simply sinful. We like to sing the songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Jamuna Puline Kadamba Kanane Kiherinu Shokiyaj. We like to say, oh my friend, Gopi friend, what did I see on the banks of the Yamuna today? This, what is that? Sham. I just can't remember it now. Karelila Rasaraj. I saw Rasaraj Sri Krishna performing his pastimes. So we like to, those songs we may like, but this kind of song that Gopinath, Mama Nivedana Shuno. Oh Gopinath, please hear my prayer. What is the next line? Bishoyi Durjana. Sada Kamarata. Kichu Nahi Moraguna. We don't like to. I'm simply a sinful rascal. Full of, attached to material desires. I don't have any good qualities. So we should hear. We need to hear this also. We also have, Grihastas also have to think of becoming detached at some point in time. Detached now, one should perform one's worldly duties, wife and husband together in Krishna consciousness, living peacefully and happily in Krishna consciousness, but at the same time knowing that this is not my ultimate identity. I can't remain forever in this particular family. Therefore, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, that Krishna Shangsha Karo, Charyanacha, Krishna Mata, Krishna Pita, Krishna Dharmasha. That we should perform our family life for Krishna Shangsha Karo, means for Krishna, or it means that we should prepare to enter the family of Krishna. That's the real family we belong to. And Charyanacha, give up all bad behavior and know that Krishna is our mother and father, and Krishna is the essence of all dharma. So why should we not surrender to Krishna? Arjuna is asking the rhetorical question. The answer is that if we don't surrender to Krishna, it's just simply rank foolishness and rascaldom. This is the only answer. Lord Shiva has surrendered to Krishna. Lord Brahma has surrendered to Krishna. But in Kali Yuga, people, they're miserable. Prayanal Payasha Sabhya Kalavasmin Yuge Janaha Manda Sumanda Matayo Manda Bhagya Yupaduta. In this Kali Yuga, people have short lives. Very short lives. Prayanal Payasha Sabhya Kalavasmin Manda, they're lazy, misguided, unlucky. And their mind is always disturbed. But they think, I'm so great. I'm so wonderful. I don't need to surrender to Krishna. So Kali Yuga people are very unfortunate. They have the opportunity to be very fortunate by taking to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement. Mostly people are fools and rascals. So we should become fully fixed in non-foolishness and non-rascaldom, or Krishna consciousness, by studying Prabhupada's books. Otherwise, as I was saying, that danger is there, that we take to Krishna consciousness as a kind of religion. If we don't actually understand what is this philosophy, by trying to understand it as Prabhupada tried so hard and took so much effort to translate these books so that we could read them, if we don't do that, then we're just taking it as a kind of religion. Someone's a Muslim, someone's a Catholic, someone's a Protestant, someone's ISKCONite. So it's a more sattvic kind of religion, you could say. But we can't enter onto the transcendental platform unless we can fully discriminate between spirit and matter. If we can't discriminate between spirit and matter, then our faith is lokic. It's connected to this world. So we have to understand these points. There's much more to be said about this, but I'll stop here and take any questions. Is there any questions, please? No question? Please give my diary and pen again. All right, well, if there's no question.
Most of the time people don't even realize that they are miserable. If you tell them that this material world is miserable, they say we are okay. I mean, they don't even feel that they are miserable. What to tell them? How to make them understand?
Someone thinks I'm not miserable. Even if you try to point it out. Well, Srila Prabhupada would point out that this material world means birth, death, old age and disease. No one can avoid this. So is that not miserable? They'll say that's natural. Yeah, it's natural, but still it's miserable. You say, well, you can't avoid it. I'm going to say you can avoid it by Krishna consciousness. It requires some piety to accept this also. But philosophically, there should be no difficulty to point out that this material world is miserable. Once, many years ago, Hridayananda Maharaj, I think you've probably all heard his name, one of Srila Prabhupada's earliest sannyasi disciples. He was on a radio show or TV show or something. There was some kind of debate going on with an atheist, and there was a moderator. And the moderator means he's supposed to be neutral, right? So Hridayananda Maharaj was saying that these are miserable. Birth, death, old age and disease. And the atheist was saying, no, it's not miserable. And Hridayananda Maharaj was pointing out how it's miserable. No one wants to die. And the moderator interrupted and said, actually it's a fact. You have to accept that disease is miserable. You know, no one said, well, I had a wonderful bout of cholera. I went in the hospital with 7 broken bones, and but it was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. So it's axiomatic unless one is extremely determined to be a rascal, one has to admit that this is miserable. Of course, there are people who are extremely determined to be rascals, as described in Srimad Bhagavatam. See if that's in the book. Matyena Krishna Paratasvatova Mito Bhipatyeta Kriha Pratanam Adanta Gobhir Vishatanta Misram Punaf Punascharvita Charvananam. Those who have Griha Vrata, they've taken a vow to remain within materialistic family life. They are determined not to be Krishna conscious. Either by their own endeavor, they'll say, I'm searching for God, but they're determined never to find Him. It's just a show. And neither by their own endeavors, so-called philosophical endeavors, nor by the endeavors of others. There's your answer. If they're determined not to be Krishna conscious, then however much others try to make them Krishna conscious, they won't be, because they're determined to enter to have uncontrolled senses. That's the whole point. All the philosophies in the world are various justifications for engaging in various degrees and types of sense gratification, because they want to chew the chewed again and again. So, as the saying goes, Prabhupada would sometimes quote that, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So if someone's determined to act in a manner which is opposed to their own self-interest, apaswarta parayana, people who are attached to their own destruction, what can you do? It is our duty to present the philosophy as it is, and then it's up to people to take it or not. Best thing is to give them Prabhupada's books, best preaching. Distribute these books. Anything else? In other words, you're asking why, what can we say to convince them? Now, you're wondering why you can't convince people. Is there something wrong with the philosophy, or is there something wrong with me? Because we have the general idea that, well, if people are reasonable and intelligent, then if we present the philosophy, then they should accept it. But the point is that most people are not reasonable or, in the true sense of the term, intelligent. The philosophy is perfect. And again, we're not saying that dogmatically. It's a fact that birth, death, old age and disease are miserable. So that's perfect philosophy, to present that. And if you say it, it may not be a fault in your presentation, but the fault lies in them. So therefore it's our duty to present this, and then if others take it or not, well, that's up to them. We did our duty, that's all. But we can't expect also that everyone, or even many people, will accept it, because most people are rascals. That's a fact. We may not like to say it, but it's a fact. What's that?
You mentioned that alaukic and laukic concept of the universe. Now, science also has come to the same stage that there is a local...
Not really.
Local and non-local reality. There is non-local reality, science has no domain.
Yeah, but they don't have any insight into what it actually is. And if we present, you see that, but their concept is still materialistic. They don't have any spiritual concept. That we have to give. If they've actually come to that point, then why don't they should accept Srimad Bhagavatam. But that they won't do. And maybe they will. I mean, it's not impossible that people will accept this. That's why we're preaching. But at the same time, we have to understand that many people won't accept it, or they may accept it only gradually and slowly. So preaching requires some patience also. It may be that you preach to someone and they reject it, but then later on they start thinking about, say, well, actually that's true.
It's still at nascent stage. All nuclear scientists are coming back to Hindu form of spiritual.
No, Hindu is a lockic term.
Local term, of course.
It's not a Shastriya term. Hindu is a lokic upadhi.
That's true.
It's not a term which defines the truth. It refers to a social group. It doesn't. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna speaks of those who are tattvavit, those who know what is reality, or tattvadarshi, those who have seen reality. So, Hindu or Hindu, that's not the question. The question is, who is tattvavit? Who knows reality? So Hinduism is another, to say Hinduism is another kind of, as I said, bhautik or lokik upadhi, on a group of people who practice what is called a religion. But as I was explaining, reality, truth, when we say Krishna consciousness, that means to understand reality as it is. That is not a kind of religion, it's not a kind of faith. One has to have faith to approach it. That's true even with science of this material world. It also requires some kind of faith. Just like I was saying, measuring a distance. Say, actually you can't measure any. In pure philosophical terms, there's no such thing as measuring a distance between 2 points, because there are no points. So, but conventionally we have to accept that there is such a thing as measurement. That requires some faith, some starting axioms are required. Otherwise there's no science, there's no geography, there's no history, there's no study of anything. Everything requires faith. To eat this requires faith that it's not poisoned. It sounds stupid, doesn't it? You sound stupid because you think, well, how could it be poison? But it could be. So faith is required. We accept as an axiom that it's not poison. So we accept as an axiom that this material world, with its incredible complexity, has not come into being by chance. And so-called scientists accept practically as an axiom that it has come into being by chance. I think that this science, Krishna conscious science, is better science than that of the atheists who say that everything has come into being by chance. It makes more sense to accept that this incredible complex, ordered complexity has been put into being and is governed by intelligence rather than by chance. Can you please advise us on how to preach to beginners? We experience that newcomers usually get scared on hearing our philosophy, Srila Prabhupada's philosophy. It's not our philosophy or Srila Prabhupada's philosophy, it's fact. Philosophy, you're talking about an opinion. It's not an opinion, it's a fact. Is there a way like how we progress in schools, like from kindergarten to higher classes? Srila Prabhupada spoke these things openly and clearly. Those who were sincere accepted, those who were not sincere didn't. That's all. Why should they be afraid? I feel that rather the preachers are afraid that people will get afraid. I don't see that people are afraid. But you're afraid that they'll become afraid because you don't have full faith in what you're saying. If you have full faith and you're presenting something which can be clearly understood, then why should you be afraid that people won't accept it? They'll only not accept it if they're not sincere. Why can't we say openly and clearly, this material world is like a place which people pass through? Why? Because it's simply full of repeated birth, death, old age and disease, which is miserable. What's the problem to understand this? Why should people not accept it unless they're insincere? And if they don't like it, well, then they won't accept it. They can go on and find something else. If they want to be cheated, they can be cheated. But what I find in the name of not disturbing people is that we don't discuss these things at all. You say, oh, you can't say these things because there are newcomers. But then but there are always newcomers. And then we never discuss these things and we never understand it. And we just remain on a sentimental platform, in which we'll be talking stories about Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but we don't understand even any basic philosophy because we never discuss it. Recently, one of my disciples offered to put my lectures on a website called iskondesiretory.com. And the answer came back, yes, but under no circumstances should there be any heavy lectures. So what? Then they can't put like 99% of Prabhupada's lectures. Prabhupada spoke heavy? What do you mean heavy? Just be straightforward, that's all. This philosophy is heavy. So he's saying no heavy lectures under any circumstances because all kinds of devotees log into this site. That means newcomer, how long are you going to be at what point do you start introducing this? Who's going to say it clearly, as Prabhupada did, and convince so many people of Krishna consciousness? Are you determined to keep this as some kind of Hindu sentimental religion, or you want to have the truth? Maybe you will get more sentimentalists if we don't speak the truth, but you won't get people who want the truth, which is what Prabhupada wanted, what Krishna wants, because he speaks Bhagavad Gita. And it's the Mayavadis who have reinterpreted Bhagavad Gita. They don't want to present it as it is, because they don't want to present the truth. So it's our duty to present Bhagavad Gita as Srila Prabhupada presented it. And if we don't do that, then we're not really representing Srila Prabhupada. And we may get many people who say Jai Prabhupada, But they don't know what Prabhupada says, because we don't tell them. That's why I say, it seems to me that many people take to Krishna consciousness as a kind of religion, rather than trying to understand the truth, the reality, that this material world is miserable, and we have to surrender to Krishna. Because we don't discuss these things. With the idea that people may become disturbed. They may become disturbed, but if they become disturbed, that just shows that they're rascals, that's all. And if we do speak the truth, then we'll get people who are sincere to understand it. And if we don't, we may get many sentimentalists who they chant Hare Krishna and think Mother Teresa is a great saint, which means they don't actually accept Bhagavad Gita as it is. So simply to collect many people, even if they're initiated and they're chanting 16 rounds, but if they don't accept the philosophy as Srila Prabhupada has given it, can we really say they're followers of Srila Prabhupada? Can we really say they're devotees of Krishna? There are so many sahajiyas, sampradayas in Bengal who they chant Hare Krishna, but they have all kinds of wrong ideas because they've never been taught the right idea. Or they prefer the wrong idea to the right idea. So no heavy lectures under any circumstances is not something given to us by Srila Prabhupada or the previous acharyas. It's some new idea that new people should not be exposed to the truth. Then when are they, why not? If I hadn't been exposed to the truth, then I probably wouldn't have come. If I'd have come in and someone told me Mother Teresa is a great saint, I'd have said, okay, thank you very much. And turned around and gone out. I could understand that even without reading Prabhupada's books, that this world is simply full of cheaters and cheated. I was looking for someone who has the courage to speak the truth. To speak the reality. I don't accept this idea that you can't speak the truth because newcomers won't accept it. If they don't, what's their problem to accept it? If they don't accept it, ask them, what's your problem? Why don't you accept that birth, death, old age and disease is miserable? What's the problem? How do you find birth, death and old age and disease in any way desirable? If they're sincere, they have to accept. If they're not sincere, then what can you do? Then you save yourself the problem of having insincere people. There's this idea, if you speak straightforwardly, people will become disturbed. But generally only very big rascals get disturbed, and our own devotees. They get disturbed. People will become disturbed if you say. They may become disturbed. You fight with them. If they say, no, all these sadhus are very good, you say, how are they good? They're not following Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita says this, fight with them. Prabhupada fought. Regularly. Prabhupada regularly got into verbal fights with people. Because he wanted to present the truth. Big men, professor. One professor was brought in Philadelphia. They brought one professor. He said, Prabhupada said, what are you teaching? I'm a teacher of Hinduism. Prabhupada said, what do you mean by Hinduism? And he said, I don't know. He thought that was a very smart, very intelligent reply. I suppose insinuating that Hinduism is something indefinable. So Prabhupada turned to Swarup Damodar, Brahmacharya at that time, and said, what do you call a person who teaches something he doesn't know? And Swarup Damodar said, a cheater, Prabhupada. So Prabhupada said to the professor, you see, he's also a PhD, he says you're a cheater. So there was a short exchange, and the professor, Prabhupada was blasting this professor who was trying to defend himself, and then he left. In fact, he was removed because devotees said, it's time for you to get out. No, you don't be offensive to Prabhupada. Prabhupada was shaking in anger that this person is such a rascal. He calls himself a teacher, but he's cheating. Actually, he was a Gujarat, he was a Vallabh Sampradaya background, but he was like an atheist or something like that. So Ravindra Sarup Prabhu, who had brought him, said, well, it's very difficult for me after that because he was still studying at the university. And he'd brought this professor, and it was very difficult because that was his professor, and Prabhupada, fought with him. And he came out, and the professor was very angry at Prabhupada. But years later, that professor, Ravindra Sarup Prabhu met him and said, actually, sometime after this exchange, I thought, and it's true what your guru said, and I've gone back to my Vaishnav roots. So you may say that was very bad preaching by Prabhupada. The professor left, he became angry, he was a very important man in the academic world. But Prabhupada wouldn't compromise. And the result was that eventually that man, he thought about what Prabhupada had said, and he accepted it. Whereas if he just met him, oh, very nice, you're a professor, very good, then there would have been no actual preaching effect. Prabhupada showed we have to fight for Krishna. And his disciple, if Prabhupada hadn't done that, his disciples also, how would they understand? So yeah, it's disturbing. Krishna consciousness is disturbing. Mostly people want religion, they want something makes you feel nice, right? So Krishna consciousness makes us feel nice by disturbing all the non-nice things which we think are nice. We have who can deny? We have so many material attachments. How are we going to ever get free from them? Not by blowing on the boil. It won't work. You have to get serious about this. Okay, I'm really going to finish now. Hare Krishna. Not finish, it means this session is finished. But I pray to Srila Prabhupada to go on speaking on these topics. Many devotees speak on very high topics. I'm in the basement cleaning up. Someone has to. We're talking about kindergarten. There's a kindergarten. This is the kindergarten. We should talk these things. Someone has to say who. Actually, we should all say. We should all be discussing these things regularly, as Prabhupada was. So, basic philosophical understanding has to be the discrimination between sat and asat. If we don't know what that is, then how can we come to the platform of sat? We can't just presume that we're already there. That's what I see. We have lots of lectures in which we presume we're already in Golok Vrindavan. But let's have a look and see where are we really at, and what do we need to do? Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, Adi, Abhishta. Eshab nachare kishe pabe Radha Krishna. This is another rhetorical question. Bhaktivinoda Thakur asks. As long as we're absorbed in Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, how can we attain Radha Krishna? You see, it's a rhetorical question. It means we can't. There's no question. So,